Brought to you by Pfizer.
In this video, you're going to see the future.
U.S. Treasury is higher.
Breaking news. We've got a livestock there.
Hello there, you awakening wonders. Welcome to Stay Free with Russell Brand. I'm pretty excited about today's show for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore's on the show with us in a minute. We're not bringing him out straight away, but he's hosting a presidential debate organised by this person called Christina Tobin. She's the founder of the Free and Equal Elections Foundation. Good luck with that! And so we're going to be talking about... I've always wanted to have someone like Jimmy Dore do a presidential debate, haven't you? That's good. Like when Vivek the other day goes, there should be Joe Rogan. It should be Tucker. Well, Jimmy Dore's going to do one. So we're going to ask him about that, how it's going to work, how he's going to handle it, as well as asking him regular Jimmy Dore stuff. Plus, we'll talk to Christina Tobin because she's sorted it all out and stuff. We've got a brilliant video for you. We're having a look at the Middle Eastern escalation. You're going to love that. Well, you're not going to love it. It's actually a tragic and very, very difficult subject to talk about. But we look at the legacy media's reporting on this subject and how the word peace, ceasefire is sort of being removed from the conversation. We look at how Raytheon and Lockheed Martin are profiting from this war. We look at the degree of censorship that's going on. It's interesting. I think well, you'll tell me, actually. What does it matter what I think? What matters is what you think. If you want to, press the red button and become an Awaken Wonder. You get access to content earlier. We did a conversation with Alex Jones the other day, that mad... Well, how do I describe him? I feel like he's an evangelical shaman, and in a culture that only believes in rationalism, people that operate on the peripheral edge lands will always get a hard time. But I talked to Alex Jones about the number of things that he was ahead of the curve on, and I talked to him about regrets, and I say that it's a really good Alex Jones conversation, even for those of you that are not Alex Jones fans, and I know a lot of you will love Alex. If you are an Awaken Wonder like Jay Gwynwald, hiya, how's it going? Democracy can't exist if censorship is in place, is what Jay Gwynwald's saying on the chat. Over on the Rumble chat, we've got Glacier Fox, Jimmy in the house, Nomadsland. Jimmy exposed RFK as a genocide. Oh, no, because it's really difficult because I know Bobby Kennedy and he's actually really, really beautiful. And I think one of the things that's been great about independent media's rise is the possibility that new political candidates and new political movements will emerge. Why do you think independent media is being attacked in the way that it is? And on that note, we'll only be able to be on YouTube because, as you know, YouTube, through its association or ownership by Google, is one of the trusted news initiative companies. That means legacy media companies are bounded together, and they all have an agreement on a very particular set of agenda. They'll support one another. They're not compete with one another. There's some pretty crazy and exciting stuff for us to discuss and to reveal as this movement continues to grow. But, you know, there is some good news because people say that Joe Biden might be experiencing decline. He's not as potent as he once was, some say. Has he lost some of his magnetism and some of his power? Well, I'd like you to hold that opinion after you see him putting on his T-shirt like a real grown-up. Let's have a look. Oh, no, I'm in charge of this. Let's put it on. Check out Joe Biden putting on a T-shirt. It's already taking too long with that music, but we've barely begun. Like that bit, that's one of the easier bits of the that bit, that's not a hard bit of getting a T-shirt on, bless you. That brass band now, they must be wheezing in there. How they keep their cheeks, there must be blood vessels popping in their cheeks. There's people applauding on the sideline. Very good. Well, he got that T-shirt on. The whole thing, look, standing with workers. Yet, Biden blocked a railroad strike, broke a promise to give workers 7 days sick pay. This is the sort of thing Jimmy Dore will love. And upping yearly fossil fuel subsidies. And on an average, despite upping yearly fossil fuel subsidies... Oh, this is a new story. That's a new story. Fair enough. Fair enough. He's not done that. We can't blame him for that. The man has not upped any fossil fuel subsidies so far. Hey, listen, let's get into this with Justin Trudeau. This is Justin Trudeau passionately talking about climate change.
The fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, Canadians are afraid of climate change. They're afraid of the extreme weather events. They're afraid of the concerns we have about a brighter future. And what we are doing is fighting climate change every day.
I've not seen them that excited in Canadian Parliament since they had that Nazi in there. They're overjoyed. Let's look at dear old Trudeau, though. He loves a private jet. Check this out for someone who's into climate change and that. Trudeau burns the jet fuel 10 months, 127 in 1 month. Trudeau used enough fuel to power a trucker convoy, but to be fair, he does make a lot of truckers stay in jail, so they can't actually use their truck. So he giveth with one hand, he taketh with the other. Perhaps that's why he's doing it. Maybe Canadian truckers are being banged up and having their bank accounts frozen for the environment. Maybe it's good for the environment. Your man Donald Trump, though, he's got a different perspective on what we should fear most. Is it climate change? Press 1 if you think it's climate change. Or 2, nuclear war, baby. Press 1 in the chat. Well, Russell, what's your position on climate change? I believe this. This is who's asking me that in the. It's Mr. Red Fox. I believe that this planet is a gift. That each of us are connected to our land, that each of us are connected to our community and our environment, and we should treat this earth with respect and love. But when measures are introduced that are clearly punitive to individuals while not regulating companies, whenever they introduce legislation and regulation that's like normal people have to be in 15-minute cities, normal people can't take flights, normal people are going to get all banged up, while people like Trudeau that mouth off about it, bang about in the old jets, while energy companies continue to be subsidised by taxpayer dollars, while in a fuel crisis and an energy crisis, fuel companies and energy companies continue to make massive profits. Thanks going on. Do you know what I fundamentally don't believe? That they care about us. That's the fundamental thing. Whether you're talking about the pandemic or a climate change crisis, I don't believe they care about us. So I don't think their regulatory measures, whether they're lockdowns or 15-minute cities, are about helping you, because I think not only do they not care about you, they hate you. And you hate them, so in a sense, it's pretty fair, isn't it? I hate the legacy media. I don't trust them. I try not to indulge in hate, because I'm trying to awaken the limitless love within me. A lot of you are saying that nuclear war is a bigger threat, and you are on the same side as your man Trump. He's doing an interview, I think, with a Mexican journalist here. And what's fascinating about this is, like, you know, Trump, he's got a complex relationship with Mexico, isn't he? Like, this is when, you know, way back, you lot probably remember, because you lot were ahead of me. You know, when Trump first announced that he was running for president and he said that thing, you know, Mexicans, they're drug addicts and all that. I was like, well, you can't say that, you know. That's what I was saying, because me, I love the people of the earth and I love the people of Mexico. But, you know, you lot said Trump would rise and that Trump was all right. You were ahead of that. Well, here's Trump now conducting an interview in Mexico saying that in the event of a nuclear war, Mexico will suffer due to their geographical proximity.
You could end up in World War III. And if World War III happens, probably Mexico will no longer be around, because the power of nuclear weapons are so big. If they hit us, you're going to be wiped out too. That's how bad it is.
He leans in like that. You're going to be wiped out too.
And when I hear these people talking about the environment and over a 300-year period, the oceans will rise by 1/100th of an inch. And this is such a threat. It's not a threat.
Not a threat.
The threat is not global warming. It's nuclear warming. It's the single biggest threat to your country, to our country, to every country.
Oh dear, amazing, amazing. So keep coming in the Rumble chat there. That guy talks. I see you, Salty, Baked Idaho, and Colonius. And over in the Wake and Wonder chat, Wild Rose. Wow, though, she says about Trump. Yeah, he's got away with words. There's no question he's a great communicator. Hey, we've got some new gates coming. We've had Russia Gate, remember that? Well, guess what's coming up next? There's China Gate and Iraq. There's going to be so many gates. We'll be able to exit and enter the world most freely. That's some of the upside.
The new Microsoft analysis has found that Russia, Iran, and China are likely to engage in newly sophisticated influence and interference efforts ahead of the 2020.
Because otherwise, why would the Democrat Party not? What do you not? Did you see Joe Biden put on a T-shirt earlier? Why would you not vote for that guy? We've worked it out. Iran and China do not. They're threatened by the speed with which that guy can put on a T-shirt. When are these people going to accept that there's a reason that people are disenchanted with democracy broadly, while the biggest single constituency is the people that don't vote at all, because there's no one worth voting for, because the whole thing's a goddamn damn sham, baby. No, that must be China have made people think that democracy don't. Iran and China have somehow convinced everybody that Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and Pfizer and all these powerful organizations have somehow been able to make people disinterested in the political process. Sooner or later, we're going to have to take responsibility for the fact that the reason people don't believe in politics and legacy media is because of their own actions.
24 U.S. presidential election. The report says all three countries are seeking to shape the geopolitical outcomes in their favor amid ongoing regional conflicts. The interference efforts are likely to take place on different online platforms than those targeted in 2016 and 2020.
What are they saying? Online. You got to watch out, though, because they'll have you. They'll have you. Hey, have you heard this? That Trump's saying that Tucker might be that Tucker would be a good VP. I've not heard this myself yet. I'm pretty interested in it. Hey, remember we got that Christmas. We got an amazing Christmas special coming up with not with a trucker. They're all sadly in jail for standing up for themselves with Tucker.
Would you consider Tucker Carlson on your VP list?
Oh,
I want to give you a hypothetical here.
I like Tucker a lot. I guess I would. I think I'd say I would because he's got great common sense. You know, when they say that you guys are conservative or I'm conservative, it's not that we're conservative. We have common sense. We want to have safe borders. We want to have a wall because walls work. You know what? When I used to say about walls, I'd say wheels and walls. Everything changes. The computer that you have in front of you in about a month from now will be totally obsolete. Right now, you have the finest equipment in the
What the computer's going to run? I know, dead computer 1 month. Wheels, walls, they last forever.
world. And in about a month from now, that equipment will be obsolete. The only two things for centuries that's not obsolete are wheels and walls, right?
Never run out. Wheels and walls. It's amazing. What an amazing communicator.
That's pretty good.
No, when you think about it, right? A wheel will always be a wheel. It's never going to change. In a wall will always be a wall.
And it'll
walls
work all the time.
No, walls work. Remember when they were saying walls
they
don't work?
Yeah. And
Remember walls?
Joe Biden's got a wall at his beach house, by the way.
Yeah, and he does. And by the way, there are a lot of other walls. Nancy Pelosi has a wall also. And if she didn't have a wall, of course, it didn't work that well with respect to the husband. But, you know, generally speaking, it would work.
Oh, there he goes. You can rely on him. We've got to get him on. We've got to get him on. When can we get him on? Someone's saying, can I show the dog on camera? There he is. Look, that's A.H. Will. There's the. Oh, he moved. Oh, that's him. That's a good boy. Ain't he a good boy, though, you big silly old dog? You big lolly old silly old dog. Hey, we got Jimmy Dore coming on in a minute talking about hosting a presidential primary. Let's try and get to 20,000 before Jimmy Dore gets here. 12,000 right now watching us live on Rumble. Get the word out. Be quiet, you. I'm so sorry about him. Hey, you know Karine Jean-Pierre, she's the press secretary of the White House. Her job, obviously, is to speak on behalf of Joe Biden, whether or not it's like, why can't he get a T-shirt on? What's going on with censorship? How's Hunter's laptop these days? She is the woman you turn to answer the questions. What number is it on, mate? Scroll through that, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's something that's just breaking right now. The House Oversight Committee has issued subpoenas for Hunter Biden, James Biden, and Biden family business associate Rob Walker.
Firstly, I love this guy in the bow tie that's asking the question. It's lovely, good cross-section of the culture right there. There's, I feel like there's a Jewish guy, there's a person of colour. This is good. That is working well, but let's see how she responds to the question.
Do you have a comment on that?
All right, thanks, everybody. Should they comply with it?
I'm not here to answer questions on behalf of the government. Could you just read your job description? To answer questions on, I'm sorry, a lot of those questions are pretty difficult to answer. So, hey, what do you want us to cover next? We got a really good story from my country, the UK. Did you know I'm English? There's this COVID inquiry in our country where it won't go far enough. Of course it won't. And would there have been a COVID inquiry at all without independent media voices saying, I think you guys are making some pretty crazy decisions right now. They wanted to find, they had 10,000 £10,000 fine fines in our country. That's British pounds from the Bank of England. That's not your dollar dues. So do you want to see a little bit from the COVID inquiry, what it looks like? They've still got hand gel. They've not learned a thing. Or if you want to see a president of a Federal Reserve Bank in Minneapolis admitting that CBDCs are simply a way for the government to monitor all transactions, press 2. To see a bit of a British COVID inquiry, press 1. Let me know what you want in the chat. 1122111. I'm going to go with the COVID inquiry. What number button's it on? There's a still of Boris Johnson. He wanted bigger fines for the rule breakers. And what number for Priti Patel? Is it 10?
Did you think that a new flat fine of £10,000 was proportionate?
It was very high. It was just...
Was it proportionate?
See, they got the hand gel. They got the hand gel on this COVID inquiry. Pay attention.
In light of the civil libertarian issues, the public health context, and the fact that these fines were being produced and imposed for breaches of social movements?
The answer is no.
It's pretty extraordinary because during the COVID inquiry, some of the things they won't be talking about, oh my God, well, the lack of clinical trials on transmission, but they won't cover insignificant death. With some of the things we've just learned about AstraZeneca, we can publicly say now that the AstraZeneca vaccine was defective and caused blood clots, that the WHO did not convey that information quickly enough. A lot of you are pressing 2 in the chat, so we'll cover the CBDC thing. Where is Gareth? Ask Frogman X. He's right there. Sometimes you can see his reflection in the glass there. Just a ghostly figure, like the haunting ghosts of your founding fathers occupying the dead shell of a democracy that once was, or a republic, as some of you like to call it sometimes. Guess who we got coming on now? If you're watching us on YouTube, we're going to leave because Jimmy Dore's coming on right now to tell us, along with Christina Tobin, who's organising it, what it's going to be like hosting the first independent presidential debate. Is Trump going to show? I don't know. How are you going to handle those peculiar characters? The primaries, the Republican primaries were hotting up. No, they're getting a little bit more interesting. We've thought for a long time that you want to see someone like Jimmy Dore run one of these things. In fact, specifically Jimmy Dore. And now he finally is. So if you're watching us on YouTube, click the link in the description right now and join us over on Rumble so I can ask Jimmy and Christina whatever the hell I want, so we can speak freely, so we can decide for ourselves what's safe, so we can decide for ourselves what's good for us, so we can decide for ourselves what information to take seriously and what information to ignore. Stuff that won't be covered in that COVID inquiry, I can tell you, because they were pretty determined to censor and control. You know how they exploit crises, don't you? Okay, so we're off YouTube now. If you're watching us on Rumble, press the red button, become an awakened wonder, support this movement as we grow, and please join me in welcoming in whatever way you want. Maybe you can just simply blow out your cheeks, you can pull out your ears, you can slap your own thighs wherever you are in this sweet world of ours, and welcome Jimmy Dore. All right, Jimmy and Christina Tobin, you're both there together in the same frame. I wasn't sure what to anticipate. Thank you so much for joining us, both of you.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Hi, nice to meet you, Russell.
Nice to meet you, Christina. Jimmy, I want to thank you again for coming on straight away when I was in the mad midst of that onslaught. I really appreciate you standing up for being a man of principle. And to see a man of principle in a position where you're conducting a presidential debate is astonishing and surprising. Can you tell me exactly how this thing's going to shake down? Who are you anticipating participating, first of all, just so I can have an image of it?
Well, the way it's going to work is the people are going to vote on a blockchain app that's going to be released, I think, later next month. And so it's going to be democracy. So people can vote, and the first top 6 presidential vote getters are going to be in our independent presidential debate, and no matter who it is. And so, I'm hoping it's going to be President Trump. I hope it's going to be, I know Joe Biden won't debate anybody because, he's demented. But I hope it will be people like Jill Stein, Cornel West, Bobby Kennedy. And that would be really an amazing thing to happen. And so that's what I'm looking forward to. And, in the United States, we used to have real presidential debates when they were run by a group called the League of Women Voters. And then, of course, both corporate parties in America didn't like that they were being asked real questions and they were being exposed to the American people for the frauds that they are. So they got rid of those kind of debates, and they developed their own private company that's funded by corporations that now runs the presidential debates. It's called the Committee for Presidential Debates, the CPD. And so guess who gets to choose? They get to choose who the people who ask the questions are. And who asks the questions? The people who get their checks signed by the corporations, the military-industrial complex, Wall Street, and Big Pharma. Those are the people who are asking questions during presidential debates. And they get to okay the questions. It's more of a circus than it is an actual debate. And so we're pushing for independent. Well, we're going to actually do one. We're actually doing an independent presidential debate. It's going to happen in February, and we're trying to raise money for it right now. We've already raised $10,000. We need $30,000 to get over the hump, and we're gonna. It's gonna be real democracy. And just like Vivek said the other night, why are you having these tools of corporate America up here do this circus and ask these stupid questions and control the debate? Is what they're actually. They're control the narrative. And why not? He said, why not have somebody like Tucker Carlson or Joe Rogan? Well, I'm here for. I was hurt that he didn't mention my name, and but here I am. And so I'm ready to do it. And we're actually looking for I would love Joe Rogan to jump on. That would be fantastic if he could. Or someone similar. But right now, this is the only independent and real presidential candidates debate. And because the other one is a sham. And so go back to you.
We've already learned that the debates themselves have been corporatized, and what's presented as an open debate, an opportunity for us to assess presidential candidates, is part of the very system that makes the whole charade redundant. Christina, can you tell us, was it the spirit of the earlier debates that's inspired you? How are you going to make it work technically? How optimistic you are about it? And what led you to select Jimmy Dore there, the outspoken, I'd call him trans-political, progressive yet traditional, populist, everyman, comic hero to host it?
Well, Jimmy's right. We're going to have a blockchain app powered by Nexus.io. Really, through ranked choice voting, the people are going to vote the top 6 candidates. I founded Free and Equal Elections over 15 years ago. We've been hosting presidential debates for 15 years. We've had Larry King in 2012, Ed Asner. I moderated 3 live presidential debates during a lockdown year in 2020. The people wanted Jimmy Dore, a coalition of organizers, a lot of them from the Rage Against the War Machine rally last February. They have another event this February at Lincoln Memorial. And many groups and organizations brought Jimmy and I together. And I met him last year in D.C. at that event, Rage Against the War Machine. He's hard-hitting. He's not beholden to special interest money. And he's funny. So you are too, Russell. And it's just like such an honor to be sitting here between 2 very accountable individuals that speak their truth, aren't beholden to the special interests like the mainstream Commission on Presidential Debates, which is really crumbling, an expired platform that is run by big money. And it was stolen by the League of Women Voters in the late 70s, who originally created the debates. So the CPD has perpetuated a fraud in the American voters. The League of Women Voters has stated that. I agree with them. And what an honor for Free and Equal Elections to be hosting this presidential debate in Los Angeles. We are finalizing at XR Studios, 360 immersive venue in Los Angeles this winter. And Jimmy's a perfect moderator. We are seeking another co-moderator. I would love for Joe Rogan, for the people out there, please reach out to Joe Rogan and ask him to join Jimmy and I at this debate for the people this winter in Los Angeles at XR Studios.
I think it sounds like an extremely exciting event. And Jimmy, I think if Vivek had said one more name, it would have been yours. So don't carry that. Don't carry that burden. How do you think that Biden's approach to financing multiple wars has influenced the polls? How do you think the sort of recent military developments in the Middle East have further prohibited free speech around that subject? That's a question for you, Jimmy.
Well, You know, it was interesting to me, Russell, that as soon as a left-right coalition was obvious in the United States coming to stop the funding of the war in Ukraine, all of a sudden another war happened and they shifted their attention. And so they're going to get their, it's ongoing wars. As Julian Assange taught us, that these wars aren't meant to be won. These wars are meant to be ongoing. And I think people are starting to wake up to that. And, you know, so what I like to do is hold people accountable, right? So accountable for what they say. And so some people think that I'm going hard on Bobby Kennedy. No, there was no bigger supporter of what Bobby Kennedy's message was, especially around COVID, especially around free speech. Bobby Kennedy said that if you don't have free speech, you don't have a democracy. And I got so excited when I heard him say that. And so now I want to hold him to that, right? And I want to hold him to his anti-war message, because he had a great anti-war message. He told the truth about the CIA. He told the truth about the funding in Ukraine. He told the truth about the proxy war in Russia. And so I think it's our job in the independent media to hold people to those, to what they say and to those ideals. And so people are tired of these ongoing wars. People in the, what I like to say is that they sent $100 billion to Ukraine, which is the most corrupt country in Europe. They sent it there without any oversight. I'm talking about the United States government, and without any debate in the United States. If you wanted to give $10 billion to the people in America, they would have to, then, which would pay for community college for everybody. That would take a decade or two of debate. You'd have to have op-eds in every New York Times and the Washington Post. Anderson Cooper would have to interview regular people. $10 billion, that's a lot of money. But for $100 billion to the most corrupt country in Europe without any oversight, it happened in the blink of an eye, and that's how you know it's all corruption. For $100 billion, if we could have spent that money in the United States, they say you could end homelessness in the United States for $20 billion. Let's just say that's true. So for $100 billion, we could have ended homelessness, then started it again, and then said we were just kidding, and then ended it again. And for $100 billion, Russell, don't you think they could have put some money in there for a dog that would lead Joe Biden off stage when he's done giving his speech?
It would seem to be a reasonable investment to get some sort of intelligent canine to help him get off the stage, and maybe some sort of, I don't know, bird to help him with T-shirts as well, which he seems to struggle with equally. This kind of packaging together of numerous wars, this inability to discuss them, the constant use of pundits on legacy media to advocate for war without declaring their interests and connections to military-industrial complex companies, means that the typical type of discourse is bounded and parametered within very, very narrow lines indeed, Christina. How do you feel that some of the candidates that are favoured will respond to being asked questions that are a little more perhaps aggressive, coming as they will from Jimmy Dore there, who we know don't hold back? Are you concerned that they may not participate? I mean, we've already kind of ruled out Biden. Do you think Trump will go? Do you think Ron DeSantis will go? Who do you think you need there for this project to be verifiable and to work?
Well, it's up to the people. The blockchain app powered by Nexus.io launches in January. And so you can go on our website, freeandequal.org, and you can register today for more updates on that app, as well as submit a question, because we really want to hear from the people. What questions do you want to have? The people are going to vote them in. I think anything's possible. We see a big pushback on even on the ballot access side across the board to keep Trump and even Kennedy, I foresee, off the ballot. And so these gentlemen and many others are going to need an independent platform to be heard. And what separates our debates from the others is that, or from the Commission on Presidential Debates, is that we use the League of Women Voters cumulative format. So our debates really engage more of a conversation, a 2-minute opening question, 2-minute closing. Each candidate, there's going to be about 5 questions or so, has 2 minutes to respond to each question in order. And they have a certain amount of rebuttals or expansions on questions. So we're here as moderators to listen to the candidates and to learn from them and let the people decide. I think it's possible that anyone can show up at our debates because there's not really many other options right now. We're seeing debate platforms, a few that we have, that are very argumentative, where the candidates are really taking over the debates. And Vivek is right. We need a debate. We're here at Free and Equal Elections. This is the debate Vivek and many other candidates are asking for, and we look forward when the people vote them in. I hope whether it's Bobby, Marianne, Cornel West, Jill Stein, and many more, Vivek, Nikki, whoever it is, they should be there for the people, and we welcome them equally.
Independent media has already changed politics. Perhaps it was immediately observable with Trump and Trump's ability to communicate and bypass the legacy media who didn't give him a chance and wouldn't have given him a chance. The rise of candidates like Vivek Ramaswamy is a further example of how independent media can be used to showcase and house new political voices. And of course, Bobby Kennedy and the way that he's used various podcasts and streamers, including us, that shows you that independent media is altering the political landscape. So a debate like this, in a sense, is a necessary and natural progression. And I think it'll be not easy, but I can see how a climate will emerge that if people don't participate in this debate, they'll be seen as cowardly, ducking out, avoiding the democracy and the electorate in the ways that they claim to not to. They want to be accessible. They want to be accountable. They want to seem like they're participating in this process. Jimmy, how do you feel like independent media has created a new environment for politicians and has created a new class of politicians? Do you think we're at the beginning of this and you'll see new people emerge? And I know it's something I ask you every time I speak to you. Could you see yourself being on the other side of that, not behind the pulpit, asking the questions and moderating, but standing for some kind of candidacy? Now, save the narcissistic bit for the end, Jimmy.
Well, to answer your last question first, yes, I was interested in doing that because I think that there needs to be a voice that's not bought by corporations or to foreign of lobbying groups, and actually just speaks for the people. And I think people are hungry for that. I think that's why you and people like me have a wide, it used to be my audience was just former Bernie Sanders supporters, but now my audience is what I have hippies when I do live performances, I have hippies come to my shows. I have guys in 3-piece suits. I have former military people. I have elderly people. I have teenagers. I have black. I have white. I have and so that's the kind of thing I think people need right now. Someone that is just speaking to the people, and they don't care so much if they agree with me on everything. What they really appreciate, especially with you and people like me and Joe Rogan, is that we're not bought, and they can trust that if we're saying something, it's actually coming from our heart, and we're not saying it because we took money from someone or we're influenced by a foreign lobby or something like that. So I think that's the big deal. And independent media has, Bobby Kennedy's almost his entire campaign has been fueled by independent media right now, right? So he's making the round on podcasts, and he's getting his message out there. And he just went on PBS the other day. I can't believe they invited him on PBS because I think they wanted to slander him, which they did. I just dropped a video yesterday about it. And of course, Bobby Kennedy's good at that now, and he knows he can see those smears coming, and he was able to push back on that right away. So I think independent media is essential, and it is changing the landscape. And that's why they have to have such narrative control, right? And that's why they have to try to discredit people like you and try to discredit people like me and Joe Rogan, is because the corporations, all they have is narrative control. And I've said this before. And if they can't control the narrative, then they have to start disappearing people. And that's a lot harder to keep covered up. So independent media is really poking a hole. And we have a lot of, thank God for Rumble, right? And thank God for Rumble, and thank God for Rumble. And Rumble's really picking up steam, and a lot of people are finding out about it. And thank God for Rumble, because YouTube, which is an amazing platform, right? You can get your message out on YouTube like no other social media out there, and it's been a big part of my show, and it's been a big part of Bobby Kennedy's campaign also. But YouTube is owned by the richest corporation in the history of mankind. It's Google, and they want narrative control, and now they suppress, and the algorithm suppresses people like me and you, and they push people towards what they call reliable news sources, which is just legacy media, which is just people, the corporate-owned media. And the reason why people came to YouTube in the first place was because they didn't feel like they were getting the truth from those places, because they're funded by the military-industrial complex, Big Pharma, and Wall Street. And everybody knows that now. So people want an independent voice like ours, and it's actually working. So when it started to really work is when they have to start suppressing us, having the algorithm get us also suppressed, and also discrediting us. That's exactly, look what they did to Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, he endorsed Bernie Sanders. He said he would vote for somebody like AOC, and they call them a right-wing crazy. And they call me the same thing. They say the same thing about you. And I say, yeah, I'm into all those crazy right-wing things like, bodily autonomy, which used to be known as my body, my choice, freedom of speech and anti-censorship used to be a lefty value for as long as I can remember. And I'm anti-war. Those are my three big issues. And Medicare for all. So that always used to be considered staunch lefty positions. And now they slander you and say that you're a right-winger for pushing those things that have been lefty positions my whole life. And people have coalesced around those issues, by the way. Almost everybody is for a version of everything I just said, and even Medicare for all, right? So depending on the poll and depending how you ask the questions, somewhere around 70% of even conservative voters want the government to take a bigger role in taking care of health care here in the United States. We're the last country that in the West that doesn't have health care for everybody. So I'm excited about independent media. I'm super excited about Rumble, and Rumble is really taking off. And Rumble's actually going to be getting their version of advertising, which is what makes YouTube lucrative for people and makes it sustainable for people to do shows like this. So now Rumble's actually going to be able to be doing that going forward. I've been told by people in the know. So I'm really excited about it, and thank God for Rumble.
And they're broadcasting the presidential debate.
Yeah, oh, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
So thanks, Rumble, so much.
So
for
Rumble is
supporting
they've already agreed to broadcast the presidential debate that we're going to be hosting. So thank God for Rumble.
We will thank our Lord God for Rumble. I thank God for Rumble most days, man. And it's exciting that this is going to be on Rumble and it's going to be funded by people, funded, you say, through blockchain technologies to ensure, I suppose, that there will be no topics that are off limits. For example, in our country, excuse me, AstraZeneca have just lost a case and they've had to admit that the vaccine is defective, and it's likely that there's going to be huge payouts as a result of that. Now, we've talked a lot about the pandemic, and we've talked about what's been revealed by the pandemic, the convergence of pharmaceutical interests, the corruption, the ineffective measures that have been undertaken, the inability to communicate openly around them, the censorship. Do you feel, Christina, that this is one of the subjects that will be covered, and how much are you planning to curate and control the content, or are you saying that all of it will be directed by the people that are funding it, which means, the people that can contribute through blockchain?
I'm glad you asked that. We plan to ask the people, do a poll through our blockchain app, not only to vote in the top 6 candidates, but what questions. And that's why we're asking them to submit questions today and sign up for more information for the blockchain app at freeandequal.org. So the people will decide a couple of the questions, I think at least 2 of the 5, and then the moderators, Jimmy Dore here, and hopefully Joe Rogan, please reach out and ask them to be a part of this debate. They can have say on the other questions, and they'll be hard-hitting questions. So truly, all the topics that you mentioned and more. This is actually a presidential debate series. So this is a kickoff for a series. We're going to have quite a few debates into 2024. So this is the beginning. I couldn't be more honored than kicking it off. But Jimmy, the way to make this happen, it's the people who are funding it. We raised $10K. Thank you, Jimmy, for promoting our campaign at freeandequal.org. Please go at freeandequal.org today and donate so we can hit that 30,000. It's going to take 6 figures to really lock it in at XR Studios. What a venue. So thank you so much, Russell, again, for both of you gentlemen using your platform to make. You're already making real change in the world, but now taking it to a presidential debate and bringing these candidates together. I'm excited to learn and bring these ideas together. And thank you, gentlemen, for all the work that you do and overcoming these odds, because they are intentionally trying to censor you. And what's brewing here at freeandequal.org is a bigger vision. It's truly an independent movement building, and I can go into greater detail another time. But there are more independent voters than there are Democrats and Republicans, and I have seen this being in the electoral arena for 25 years. I'm 42 years old now, and I've seen it, the restrictive ballot access barriers, that we don't have alternative voting methods. These voting machines that are devolved dominion cannot be trusted. We need to open the presidential debates. And so there's a bigger vision here. And I look forward to working both of you long term to really bring about free and equal elections, not only throughout the United States. The whole world is watching. And when we unite, it doesn't matter whether you're from Israel or Palestine or Ukraine or Russia, when we all different genders and races together and recognize when we unite here in America, the whole world will follow. And I see the Democrats and Republicans, I see beyond party lines. There being more independent voters being peacefully replaced really flowing into the congressional races into 2026. So this is an exciting year for independents, and I see all the candidates, whoever's running for president. There's over 150 candidates running for president. That's amazing, and I hope all of them consider running for Congress in 2026.
That's fantastic, Christina. So go to Free and Equal to contribute and ensure that this debate takes place, that you'll be able to watch on Rumble. Let us know in the chat right now what subjects you want to see debated by presidential candidates. Do you want to talk about the Ukraine war? Do you want to see about how war is being funded? Do you want to talk about legacy media and censorship? Do you want to talk about the pandemic? Someone says, please don't ask Russell to moderate. His questions are longer than the answers. Very fair. You're going to have trouble with Jimmy Dore, let me tell you. There's not going to be many 5-word questions from the man Dore. I'll tell you that right now. Jimmy, when we talk, often what you say is the thing they fear the most is people coming together beyond political categorizations, beyond cultural divisions. How are you going to frame that in what is, to some degree, sure to be a partisan endeavor?
So there's no doubt that the corporate media here, at least in the United States, is they report. So we used to have 50 giant media companies in America when I was a kid. And then in 1996, Bill Clinton, who was a tool of the establishment and a tool of Wall Street and a tool of the military-industrial complex, he took us down from 50 giant media companies, and now there's just 6 in the United States. So now it's just everything every newspaper, every TV show, every radio show, everything everything you see is controlled by just a handful of billionaires, and the same kind of handful of billionaires that run the entire world, and they report every story in a way that takes your eye off the ball. They report every story that makes you blame your neighbor and hate your neighbor for the pain you're feeling. Like, during COVID, they did a lockdown. The billionaire class did a lockdown that smashed and crushed people. They did a controlled demolition of our economy, and it made about 400 new billionaires, but everybody else felt the pain from that. And now they want me to blame my neighbor for the pain that I'm feeling economically because of what the billionaire and the establishment class did. And they want me to blame my neighbor and hate my neighbor because they wouldn't take a vaccine that didn't work the way they said it did in the first place. Well, I'm not going to hate my neighbor. I'm going to love my neighbor, and I'm going to join with my neighbor against those oligarchs, because that's the only thing that scares them, to see people from the left, the right, and the center coming together to coalesce around a common enemy. And that common enemy is the oligarch. And the United States is not a democracy. That's what the Democrats like to say right now. Well, you have to keep voting for Demented Joe so that you've got to save your democracy. Democracy's on the ballot. Hey, your democracy was stolen from you decades ago. Princeton study 10 years ago proved that we don't live in a democracy, that we live in an actual oligarchy, and your vote actually doesn't matter right now because they do. When the Iraq war was happening, there were millions and millions of people in the street, millions of people in the street around the world. Didn't make a difference. They got their war. Famously, Leslie Stahl was interviewing Dick Cheney, and she said, 3/4 of the American people are against this Iraq war. And his response to that was, so what? And so we got to so that's what the corporate media does. The corporate media makes us blame each other, turn on each other. Right now, the corporate media in America makes you think that your neighbor is your enemy, that half the country, the same country that elected an African-American, Barack Obama, twice, somehow they became the most racist country in the world. All they talk about is racism, racism, racism. And racism has gotten better and better and better every year of my life, to the point that we elected Barack Obama twice. And so, but they want you to think half the country's racist. They want you to think that the truckers in Canada are Nazis. That's the thing about that's the beauty of how their corporate propaganda works, and the beauty of them having only 6 companies, right? Because now everybody who works in the media knows that they can't step out of line because there's nowhere else to go to get a job. And so the power of that propaganda, it makes people in America, we can't tell the difference between a Nazi and a freedom fighter. We look at the truckers who are freedom fighters. By the way, the truckers were vaccinated at a higher rate than the general population in Canada. They weren't protesting medicine. They were protesting bullshit authoritarianism, and they were right, and they were freedom fighters. And in America, we can't tell the difference between a freedom fighter and a Nazi because the corporate media tells us they're Nazis. So we look at the freedom fighting truckers and we call them Nazis, and we look at actual Nazis in Ukraine and we call them freedom fighters. And so that's what we're pushing back against, and that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of voices like mine and voices like yours that actually tell you that up is down and black is white. That's what the corporate media tells you. Whatever the corporate media is telling you, the exact opposite is usually true. And so that is the only thing that scares them, is when people come together along class lines and not political partisan lines. That's what scares them, and that's what they're determined to keep us divided. They're determined to keep us blaming each other, and not only that, but hating each other and fearing our neighbor. And let's remember, the people who run this country, the billionaire class, they don't care if there's a civil war in our country. Chaos always favors the establishment. And then if you get afraid of your neighbor, and your neighbor's a Nazi and your neighbor's a white supremacist, that, you're going to be begging for the government to come in and provide security for you and take away more civil liberties and your freedoms. They used 9/11 to pass a thing called the Patriot Act. How Orwellian is that? The Patriot Act turned the United States into a surveillance state. So now every email and every phone call and every text you send, they are monitoring. And then Barack Obama, he repealed habeas corpus. So now you don't have a right to a speedy trial, and all they have to do is say you're a terrorist to do it, and they'll do that, right? And Barack Obama, his whole entire cabinet came from one email from Citigroup. And the reason which is Wall Street, right? So he was a puppet of Wall Street, and everybody knows it. And the reason I know his entire cabinet came from that was because Julian Assange revealed that in WikiLeaks, which is why they've been trying to kill that guy and demonize him since he did that. And so I'll just end it there.
Oh, wow. I tell you what, this is going to be a presidential debate with a real difference. It will be on Rumble. To make it happen, please visit freeandequal.org and participate by suggesting subjects, by donating. It's a pretty low threshold financially, but a very high threshold spiritually and in terms of its authenticity and integrity. Just to see Jimmy Dore in front of people running for president asking the kind of questions that Jimmy Dore asks is surely worth making the donation for. But could you blame them if they were terrified to face those kind of questions? I don't know. Do you think they got the minerals, the stones, the courage to face Jimmy Dore? Well, put them in that position by making your donation. Go to freeandequal.org. We'll put that in the chat. Thank you, both of you. Christina, thank you for your bravery and ingenuity in coming up with that idea, and for having such a fantastic host as Jimmy to ensure that you will deliver on the premise. Jimmy, thanks as always for being an advocate for people coming together against real power and for being a man of true integrity. I really value you. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you very much for having us and giving us your platform, and stay free.
Thank you, Russell.
Stay free, Jimmy. Stay free, Christina. Thank you so much for coming on. What an amazing conversation that was. So, yeah, we're posting that now. So support it through blockchain. Support it in any way you can. One of the things I didn't have time to talk to Jimmy and Christina about was, look, check this out. Hillary Clinton, George Bush, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, John Fetterman. What do they all have in common? None of them will talk about peace. None of them will talk about a ceasefire. Have you noticed now that legacy media won't even discuss that possibility when it comes to the Middle Eastern conflict? Those ideas are off the table, off the agenda. We have to find ways to come together. We have to listen to voices that advocate for peace. We have to provide an environment where those that are caught up in the mad heartbreak and bereavement of insanity and war are able to be held. In this conversation, we'll talk about the influence that Raytheon, Lockheed Martin have over legacy media. We'll be talking about how legacy media are censoring even conversation around peace. When was it that happened? When was that decision made? If today the Beatles would have to sing, all we are saying is give blank a chance, because they wouldn't be able to say it on the mainstream. It simply wouldn't be permitted. On the show, we got Dave Martin coming on Monday and Alex Jones for a conversation that, I wouldn't blame you if you couldn't wait. If you want to watch it right now, press the red button, become an awakened wonder like Love in Action and Elfin Sophia and Mystic Kipper and Royal Ice and Boldly Me. Thanks for the adulation. I love it. All of you guys, I love you. But you also get early access to interviews, meditations, podcasts, Bible readings. We're organising communities. We're moving forward with revolution. Aya 37, she's joined us now. Broom Dan, Mo Major 62, Sandria 1, Winston 67, all new members of our community, but we need you. We need you. Now, why don't the establishment want a ceasefire? Hillary Clinton, George Bush, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders and John Fetterman will not discuss peace. It doesn't matter where you come from religiously, ideologically or nationally. We should find a way, surely, not to be on the same side as Clinton, Bush and Obama, shouldn't we? Here's the news? No. Here's the effing news.
No, here's the fucking news.
What do Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, George W. Bush and even Bernie Sanders have in common? They all want to escalate the war in the Middle East, even though it could lead to World War III. This escalating conflict in the Middle East is perhaps the most sensitive of all the global sensitive issues that there are right now. It's very difficult to talk about Ukraine-Russia because of Ukrainian people and the escalating situation in China. There are cultural issues that are very difficult to discuss now because we're so divided. But the mother of all issues is, of course, the conflict between Israel and Palestine, because it seems very difficult to say that Hamas's attack was wrong, Israel's response is brutal and devastating, and if we don't end this, it's going to get worse and worse, obviously. That's simply obvious. And even saying both sides, actually, is something people don't like. Oh, one side's an army with nuclear war, the other one's potentially in an open prison. You know, this is very, very difficult to discuss. But where there is agreement is in the political class and in the financial sector, particularly the military-industrial Congress and people in Congress that own shares in weapons manufacturing companies. They all want this war to continue to escalate. Now, I know how divisive this is. I know there are some people that will settle for nothing less than support Israel, and other people who will settle for nothing less than support Palestine. How will we ever get to a point where we're able to, even at the level of conversation with people that are not involved, reach some sort of consensus if we're not willing to discuss peace? Peace, ceasefires and de-escalation have literally been taken off the agenda by the political class and the legacy media class. I always say this when I talk about this subject. If you're personally involved because you are Israeli or you're Jewish or you're involved because you're Muslim or you're involved because you have relatives in Palestine or you're particularly affiliated to this issue for emotional, spiritual, religious, national reasons, then I would not try to dissuade you from your perspective. It would be ridiculous and actually rude, impolite, almost heretical. But for people that are not directly involved, I think we have to address that this is an escalating humanitarian crisis. It's likely to lead to a migration crisis if those documents prove to be true. I'm referring to the documentation that says it's part of an explicit plan to remove the entire population of Gaza. Even if you just look at this in terms of migration and put aside for a moment the ongoing slaughter and death that's currently taking place, we have a significant global issue to address. That's, again, without looking at the likelihood that this leads to a geopolitical crisis that's not going to be easy to walk away from if Iran get involved, if Russia get involved. It's extraordinary. So this is what I'm putting to you. Shouldn't we be able to talk about a ceasefire? I recognise if you're an Israeli person and you are affected by those horrific terrorist attacks, you're like, these are a different type of people, they have a different type of ideology. I recognise if you are connected to Palestine, that these people have been oppressed ever since the establishment of the Israeli state. What's going on now? The bombing of a civilised population. Oh, well, if Hamas hide there, but what if Hamas were hiding in Israel? Like, it's so difficult. It's so difficult to even you find yourself, you're saying, God, all I want is to pray for love. All I want to pray, like, for the Muslim people to feel connected to Allah and peace, for the Jewish people to feel connected to God or Yahweh and to feel peace. That is somehow a controversial statement. If we're going to leave this here and all of us just sort of quietly back off into our own private corners of the internet with our own particular tiles, cancelling the people that we don't agree with, then I suppose what we have to accept is there's going to be a massive migrant crisis. There's going to be an escalation of the war in the Middle East. Raytheon and Lockheed Martin are going to make a good deal of money. Millions of people in Palestine are going to be displaced or killed. There will be further terrorism, probably not only in the Middle East, but probably across Europe and North America. That, I think, is the price of not discussing this. Obviously, I'm aware of my own personal limitations now more than ever, but my own recent experiences of not speaking out have told me that difficult conversations sometimes have to be had. So let's look at why is it that Barack Obama, George W. Bush, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, John Fetterman will not discuss a ceasefire? Why is that? Why is it that the legacy media, the mainstream media, won't even put the word cease on the tickers on the the bottom of their screen, let alone invite experts in peace. Why is it the marches and protests are so contentious? Do you think we're all being invited to pick a side, knowing that as long as we are divided, particularly those of us, as I keep reiterating, are not Israeli, not Palestinian, not Muslim, not Jewish, those of us that have just got caught up in the mad hysteria and are unwilling to step back, as long as that's happening, how is there going to be any progress at all? That's a genuine question. Let me know in the chat. Remember, we stream every day on Rumble. We've got some incredible shows coming up for you. But now let's look at this incredibly complex, incredibly painful issue together. And let me reiterate once again, whatever side of this you're on, and I mean ideologically, not militarily, I offer you absolute sympathy, and I wish I could contribute in some meaningful way, even if it's just having a conversation on our channel. Let's get into it.
And in some cases, you can try to maintain your moral innocence, but that won't solve the problem.
Even a generalized principle like that is difficult, because if you were to actually approach this from a position of moral innocence, you would say war is bad, violence is bad, wherever possible, diplomatic solutions should be sought. That's exactly what I'd say if it was the Ukraine-Russia conflict that we were discussing. Here, particularly from a former president, there's an assumption, a baked-in assumption, that military action is necessary. Whether that's the droning campaigns that Obama backed, I think more than any other president, certainly more than his predecessor, George W. Bush. So Barack Obama is coming from a very particular perspective. One thing this story does highlight is you have total hegemony when it comes to the political class. This is one of the issues where people are not furiously debating this amount of time before you can have an abortion. No abortions at all. Yes, guns, no guns. Here it's war.
And so if you want to solve the problem, then you have to take in the whole truth. And you then have to admit nobody's hands are clean.
Well, your hands aren't clean. Like, there's an attempt by Barack Obama to sort of paint a picture where people that have literally sanctioned droning raids are the same as the rest of us that are like, well, actually, I'm pro-Israel or I'm pro-Palestine. This is one area where the invitation for everybody that's outside of the establishment classes that literally benefit from war in so many ways, it galvanizes populations, it causes division, it generates profit, it's good for the media. Anyone outside of that should be going, hey, war's bad, isn't it?
That all of us are complicit to some degree.
That's kind of a spiritual perspective. Like, are you bringing to this conversation an attitude of peace and conciliation, or are you being incendiary? You could ask that, I suppose, of yourself. But when you're actually a president that's participated in treaties and bombing raids and assassinations and weddings being bombed, that's different. That has to be acknowledged. That has to be like, when I was president, I escalated this shit.
I look at this and I think back, what could I have done during my presidency to move this forward as hard as I tried? I've got the scars to prove it.
Well, some people haven't got the scars because they've been annihilated by bombing raids. This conflict has divided people. It's divided the right, it's divided the left, it's pulling people apart. And one of the only things that perhaps we could agree on is a peaceful solution as quickly as possible, an end to bombing. Like, these are the kind of things that certainly have to be discussed. To censor those ideas is terrifying.
But there's a part of me that's still saying, well, was there something else I could have done?
Well, yeah, there is actually. Maybe some bankers should have gone to jail for what happened in 2008, and the Yemen shouldn't have been so heavily droned. But let's put that aside and see what Hillary Clinton's got to say on the subject.
People who are calling for a ceasefire now do not understand Hamas. That is not possible.
Marshall McLuhan would say that the medium is the message. In this instance, the medium is Hillary Rodham Clinton. Hillary Clinton from the Clinton Foundation. Hillary Clinton that's never met a war that she didn't love. Obviously, no one's going to change their view of Hamas on the basis of information that's available about Hamas's intentions. But you might also want to look at the conduct and behaviour of the United States government, particularly when Hillary Clinton's been in positions of power. A lot of people have died as a result of decisions she's participated in. And also, perhaps collectively, we want to make a decision. Whose side are we on? And that might not be as simple as Islam, Judaism, Christianity, secularism versus a religious perspective. It might start to become an elite establishment that benefit from perpetuating war versus everybody else who might be able to find some kind of solution where the imperialist, colonialist and economic imperatives to be removed. A lot of people are benefiting from this war. We'll get into that in a minute.
10,000 people in Gaza have been killed, half are children. The Pope's calling for a ceasefire. The UN has called for it. I'm just asking you. You're a good guy. I voted for you. I know you're a nice guy. This is important.
You need to leave.
Here, can I give you a phone?
That's enough of that. Shame there's a rubber duck in the background and sort of quite gentle rock music.
I think we are sleepwalking our way into World War III. Sleepwalking our way into World War III with one foolish decision after another, as you outlined, David. And really, people should be deeply self-reflective. If their predictions have not come true, they should consider whether perhaps their other predictions might not come true either. I mean, what is the track record here? It's not good.
He answers his own question. The track record, indeed, is not good. So, again, it's left to Elon Musk extraordinarily to be the voice of reason, as during the Ukraine-Russia conflict ongoing, it was up to him to not use Starlink to potentially exacerbate conditions by allowing it to be used by bombing raids, even though that was framed in some extraordinary ways by the dominant legacy media. Let's have a look now at how the legacy media are reporting on this. The likelihood of a global migration crisis of unprecedented levels, as well as the potential for World War III. And indeed, is there a way, with this complicated issue, with all of the complicated historic, religious issues involved, that there could be a peaceful and helpful conversation? Does anybody want to have that conversation? Let me know in the chat, let me know in the comments. Since the October the 7th Hamas attacks and the subsequent ongoing Israeli airstrikes, US TV news has offered extensive coverage of Israel and Gaza, but as casualties mount, most outlets have paid scant attention to growing calls for ceasefire. After Hamas killed more than 1,400 people in Israel on October the 7th and took some 200 hostages, Israeli bombing killed over 5,000, now 10,000 people in Gaza as of October the 22nd, including more than 1,400 children. That's over 4,000 children now. They won't even know. The children won't know whether they're Muslim and Palestinian or Jewish children. The children on either side, if you left them and just said, listen, you guys are basically the same, they'd find a way through it. We're imposing historic violence needlessly. And if this is naive, then perhaps naivety might be one of the areas we should consider exploring, seeing how wisdom, rationale, and entrenchant tribal dispute might lead to World War III. Jewish-led protests in New York and other cities on October the 13th, and again in Washington, D.C. on October the 18th, made a ceasefire their central message. And a recent Data for Progress poll found that 66% of likely US voters agree that the US should call for a ceasefire and de-escalation of violence in Gaza. So why is it not being discussed if it's something that even voters in their run-up to an election are interested in? Jewish-led protests, at least, is some cause for optimism, I would say, because if people that are directly affected, religiously affected, feel like peace would be the answer, perhaps this is the kind of leadership we should be looking towards. Let me know in the chat. But the Biden administration has actively tried to suppress discussion of de-escalation. The Huffington Post reported on October the 13th that an internal State Department memo instructed staff not to use the words de-escalation or ceasefire, end to violence or bloodshed, or restoring calm in press materials on the Middle East. Do not mention restoring calm. What we got to do is exacerbate tension and conflict. Well, that seems to be going quite well. Good. That's because no one ever mentioned ceasefire or de-escalation. We're doing our part in the press. Once again, the Biden administration are involved in censorship. If you disagree with censorship, then this is censorship. Remember, one of the things we continually talk about is having some principles, I suppose. That means values that don't alter on the basis that you would benefit from ignoring that principle. Otherwise, it's not a principle, it's a tactic. And here, the suppression of language like end to violence and restoring calm. Like restoring calm, that's not something that should be said. Should we try and restore calm? Looking at broader cable news coverage, FAIR found that mentions of cease appeared in closed captioning on screen for an average of only 19.7 seconds per day on Fox, 11.1 seconds per day on CNN, and 9.2 seconds per day on MSNBC. Over the course of a whole day on MSNBC, only 9 seconds were devoted to the word cease, when there are wars everywhere. I mean, how many times did they say, take your vaccine? Well, the rest of it. As we continually discuss on our channel, the legacy media present and amplify narratives that are favourable to the agenda of the establishment. They did that during COVID. Take your vaccine, sit down, shut up, stay locked indoors. They did it with Ukraine, Russia. This is a necessary war. Putin's crazy. NATO did not provoke Putin, and it appears that that's happening again. Now, whether or not you are ideologically affected, I again say to you, I'm not trying to intervene with your emotional processes and your allegiance if they are heartfelt, familial, and religious. But what seems to be difficult to query is that the legacy media have taken taken a view here. Could that be because, as in other cases, it's connected to profit? Let's get into that. As tensions escalate between Israel and the Hamas group, it's been revealed US congressional leaders have been making some strategic investment moves into military-related stocks. Since the October 7 attack by Hamas on Israel, shares of Boeing Co., Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman and Raytheon Technologies have all increased in value, collectively adding roughly $23 billion in market capitalization. Why are we focusing on how many children have died when business is booming? Unusual Wales revealed a list of over 50 politicians who currently hold stock positions that directly benefit from war in the Middle East. 4 US politicians have profited from purchases they made in shares of defense companies just ahead of the Israel-Hamas conflict. Well, Elon talked about predictions. There's some predictions that paid off. So the legacy media have got a preferred narrative. The military-industrial complex have got a preferred outcome. What is likely to happen if this war continues to escalate? We've heard Elon Musk say World War III is a possibility. Let me know in the chat in the comments if you agree that that's a possibility. Also, though, there's the official information from the Israeli intelligence ministry that says that part of their intention is to clear the Gaza region. This seems like an extraordinary move. Let me know what you think about that in the chat. And however you look at it, it's going to cause an extraordinary migrant crisis. Now, a migrant crisis means that those people will be displaced, whether that's to Sinai or wherever, I don't know at this stage, but they're going to have to go somewhere. Now, even if your interests are nationalist, the increase of migrants, you know, in the US through the southern border, in the UK, from various ways across the channel and across European countries, a migrant crisis means people are going to have to go somewhere. Not to mention that many of these people might be bearing certain grievances as a result of the manner in which their migration was brought about. It's difficult not to regard them as refugees if indeed they are moved on as part of a deliberate and explicit edict. Let me know what you think in the chat. The Israeli Ministry of Intelligence is recommending the forcible and permanent transfer of the Gaza Strip's 2.2 million Palestinian residents to Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, according to an official document. The 10-page document, dated October the 13th, 2023, bears the logo of the Intelligence Ministry, a small governmental body that produces policy research and shares its proposals with intelligence agencies, the army and other ministries. It assesses 3 options regarding the future of the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip in the framework of the current war and recommends a full population transfer as its preferred course of action. It also calls on Israel to enlist the international community in support of this endeavour. It seems like something, again, that ought be considered pretty carefully, and it also seems like an unprecedented and extraordinary move that's likely to lead to some negative consequences. The fact that an Israeli government ministry has prepared such a detailed proposal amid a large-scale military offensive on the Gaza Strip following Hamas's deadly assault and massacres in southern Israel communities on October the 7th reflects how the idea of forced population transfer is being raised to the level of official policy discussions. I can of course imagine that if you were affected by those horrific attacks, that any solution would seem plausible. Any solution. Destroy, destroy, destroy. I presume I would feel similar feelings if my children were murdered, God forbid. But isn't the role of diplomacy, isn't the role of media to openly discuss the possible outcomes and indeed the already abhorrent crisis that's taking place in Gaza as a result of the response? Isn't that the responsibility of people that aren't personally affected? I think a kind of a line has to be drawn, as one might draw around a grieving person in the instances of people from across the spectrum of this conflict who are temporarily so affected by the emotion, the deep emotion and trauma that perhaps they are unable to consider the various potential consequences of ongoing military and violent conflict. Fears of such plans, which would constitute a serious war crime under international law, it's worth considering, have grown in recent weeks, especially after the Israeli army ordered about 1 million Palestinians to evacuate the northern Gaza Strip ahead of escalating bombardment and incremental ground incursions. The document recommends that Israel act to evacuate the civilian population to Sinai during the war, establish tent cities and later more permanent cities in the northern Sinai that will absorb the expelled population and then create a sterile zone of several kilometres within Egypt and prevent the return of the population to activities, residences near the border with Israel. At the same time, governments around the world, led by the United States, must be mobilised to implement the move. The document unequivocally and explicitly recommends transferring Palestinian civilians from Gaza as the desired outcome of the war. Well, as the article says, that would constitute a war crime, and I suppose in any sensible mentality, all war and all violence is obviously already a crime, and I suppose we should be collectively looking at solutions beyond that. This is an article by Dennis Kucinich, who offers some alternative perspectives that indeed provide us with some optimism without being disrespectful to people that are directly affected by this conflict. War reduces all nothingness. It is as if 10,000 Palestinians and more had never existed, but they did, just as the 1,400 Israelis killed on October the 7th existed. They had birth dates, names, fragile exchanges of human emotion, of love, of family, private moments in everyday life that confirmed their existence. Obliterated. Nothingness. Whatever media we consume, we see only a fraction of the massive display of inhumanity occurring in Gaza, the reduction of living, breathing, feeling people to objects. This is heartless, this is soulless, this reduces all of existence to the nothingness of smoke, human smoke. The violence is calculated, it's rooted in power politics, in racism, in apartheid, in twisted history, opportunism disguised as vengeance, statecraft as slaughter. We in America are paying for the extermination of our fellow humans. Our weapons are creating carnage against helpless people. Our aircraft, our ships, our troops have entered the fray greatly outnumbered. But we are not helpless. We must demand now that our government takes a new direction, and soon, not only for ceasefire, but a ceasing of war, the end of arms sales to fuel war, the end of 800 military bases around the world, the end of the theft of our tax dollars for killing, the end of policies that pit people against each other, the end of the destructive psychology justifying violence to maintain strategic balance, the end of the false justifications for sending our troops into harm's way. If that perspective is one that you don't want to consider, then you're on the same side as Barack Obama, George W. Bush, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, John Fetterman, etc. If we can recognize together that the American economy appears to require the perpetuation of global violence, if, as we've been saying on this channel with regard to other conflicts, there is a kind of unipolar globalist agenda within which the military-industrial complex and the American military conspire, then you have to consider the broader proposal here. Would it be beneficial to end this war? Would it be beneficial to not have institutionalized violence as part of an economic model? It is unfathomable beyond the Orwellian to commit ethnic cleansing and call it defense, to preach democratic values while practicing apartheid, to claim wholesale theft of property a right, to take Palestinians their homes, kill their children, destroy their family, their culture, their history, and deem it the fulfillment of a prophecy ordained by God. That this genocide is being visited upon the Palestinians by the descendants of those who suffered the utterly contemptible, indelible inhumanity of the Holocaust is incomprehensible. After all, who has suffered more than the Jews during the Holocaust? Entire families wiped out in a racist elimination plan. The awful killings of innocent Israelis on October the 7th and the wave of anti-Jewish sentiment that followed are a powerful reminder of the vulnerability of Jews everywhere. But the destruction of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank brings back greater risks for the survival of Israel itself and all those who dwell within. Do not assume that it is only the artifacts of the humble daily lives of Palestinians that lay buried in bomb craters. The America that could be, our own hopes and dreams for a prosperous and secure nation, lie alongside the bodies of the men, women and children in those ruins. Let us stand for the survival of both Jews and Arabs. Otherwise, we are all participants in the massacres that have been and those that are yet to come. The leaders of the world must assert common humanity and enact a cessation of this madness and create a new path, a new map, which is fair to all, and establish a new peaceful coexistence that recognizes the inner equality of all. We are called to take sides. Let us take the side of peace. Let us take the side of reconciliation. Let us take the side of restoration. Let us take the side of humanity. Let us all speak out against this descent into madness, into nothingness. And we Americans must demand that our government heal our own nation, serve our own people, and use our precious resources to improve the lives of all Americans. Once again, with respect to those of you that are unable, due to grief and the ongoing tragedy, to look at this with some clarity, I believe that we, the rest of us, have to seriously consider where we're heading as a people, what the likely outcome is. Is it a coincidence that the media will not discuss a ceasefire? Is it a coincidence that Raytheon and Lockheed Martin continue to profit? Is it wise to facilitate the criminal removal of millions of people from their homeland? And what are the likely consequences of that all around the world? I believe, unless those of us that are able to do not demand peace in a loving way, with due grace and understanding for the people that are directly involved, we are heading towards World War III. I don't know how long we as a species can precipitate this kind of violence, this kind of hatred, this kind of tribalism. But what I do know is the media benefit from it. George W. Bush thinks it's a good idea. Joe Biden thinks it's a good idea. Hillary Clinton thinks it's a good idea. Barack Obama thinks it's a good idea, because one way or another, they benefit from these conflicts. That's why the media can't speak to you openly about it. That's why the kind of division between us is stoked continually. That's why I believe that we have an individual and collective duty to find it within ourselves to awaken the resources that might lead to peace and change. If we are willing to be tribalized and encamped, then I do not see how we can proceed together. Then who will benefit? The establishment will benefit. The media will benefit. The people in Congress that own stocks and shares and invested more heavily in them on the eve of this war will benefit. But I don't see who else will benefit. Not if it indeed leads to World War III. And that is a serious consideration. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the chat and the comments? Whether or not you are open to changing your perspective. Whether you believe that peace should be an option for all of us. Whether you believe that collectively we share something that is greater than what divides us. Let us know all that and more in the comments. But more important than any of that, if you can, please stay free.
Many switch in, switch on, switch off. Many switch in, switch on, switch off, switch on. Many switch in, switch on, switch off. Many switch in, switch on, switch off.